Hey, what's up, everyone? Uh, Lately, I've seen a couple of videos where 50 Beowulf was mentioned. And I don't know, people kind of talk about it like it's some waste of time cartridge that has absolutely no usefulness whatsoever. So I figured what I would do is I would take two really, really highly regarded rifle rounds that are very, very useful. No one would argue, I don't think. And I'd compare the 50 Beowulf to these two highly regarded, well used, well respected rifle cartridges. Now, what I'd like to do is get one of all three rifles, take them out to my very large piece of land, and run extensive tests. Unfortunately, I don't have a really large piece of land, and I don't have a 308, so that's not going to happen. Then I figured I could introduce some fancy graphics to show you stuff, but all I have is a notebook. So bear with me for a second. So what I figured I'd do is I'd go on the internet and I do a very quick research. Well, I mean, when I say very quick research, I mean I went to Wikipedia. That's kind of my thing. If you don't like it, I'd be glad to refund your subscription fees. Oh, that's right. This is a free video. Never mind. But let's get to it. So I'm looking at velocity, projectile weight, foot-pounds of energy, effective range, and felt recoil. Now, with all that said, the numbers I got are kind of like a very quick average of some of the examples on the Wikipedia pages for each of these rounds. Check them out for yourself. Now, 308 numbers came with a 24-inch barrel. 5.56 came with a 20-inch barrel. 50 Beowulfs were tested in a 16-inch barrel. A little more on that as we go along. Now, velocities, as you can tell right here, velocities for the 308 were 26 to 2800, 2800 to 3200 for the 5.56, and a pretty slow 1700 to 1900 for the 50 Beowulf. Of course, don't forget that 308s of 150 to 175 grain typically, 55 to 63 for 5.56 typically, and 300 to 400 for a 50 Beowulf. Now, of course, there's some outliers, but I'm using the more popular data. Now, foot-pounds of energy. 26 to 2700 for the 308, about 1300 for the 5.56, 2300 to 2800 for the 50 Beowulf. Okay, so you think about it, with the 308, you're getting basically 50 Beowulf numbers for the 308 and the 50 Beowulf. Pretty similar, 2600 to 27, 2300 to 2800. Of course, the 308 is using that with a 24-inch barrel. 50 Beowulf is using it with only a 16-inch barrel. That's pretty impressive. Plus, don't forget the 50 Beowulf was kind of made to be used in like a close quarters combat situation and, more up close and personal work. Now, with that in mind, you look at the effective range of a 308, it's about 1,000 yards. Now, a talented shooter can reach further, but it's about 1,000 yards. 50 Beowulf, I've seen some people say 50. I've seen some people say 100. Some say 150. So I just put 50 to 150. Let's call it 100 yards just to hit in the middle. From what I understand, after about 100 yards, because of these high grain weights, the bullet drops. And I think it was something like at 200 yards or 300 yards, it actually has a 46-inch drop. So if you're firing at something that is, about 4 feet high, it's basically in the dirt at 300 yards. It's a big, fat, heavy cartridge, and that bullet just drops. So you're not going to be, doing any sniper work with that by any means. So, I mean, long-distance shooting, the 5.56 looks decent, and the 308's by far the best of the three. You're not going to want to go up much past 100 yards with a 50 Beowulf. That's a limitation. Now, felt recoil, AR, 3 to 4 pounds of felt recoil, 15 to 16 roughly for the 308, and 18 to 30 pounds for the 50 Beowulf. Basically, I've heard it's equivalent. I should say they found that it's equivalent to a shotgun. I would kind of agree with that. maybe, kind of like maybe double up buck is pretty similar. So now, what is the purpose of this? Well, I think the purpose is that the 50 Beowulf is kind of sometimes talked about like it really has no purpose, but it really does. Um, you know, let's say, this is going to sound crazy, but a home defense gun. You're dealing with a 16-inch barrel versus 20 versus 24. That's one thing. Second of all, let's say you were to use a 308, which I don't hear many people advocating for, but let's say you were. That's going to zip through a lot of walls and keep on going. Who knows how long? 50 Beowulf, it's going to start dropping a lot sooner. If your neighbors are more than, say, a couple hundred yards away, once it starts going through walls and stuff, it's probably not going to do much damage outside because it's going to be dropping a lot. Foot-pounds of energy, if it hits something, it's going to do something. You have twice the foot-pounds of energy as the 5.56. You're right up there with the 308, but you have something that's far more compact with an 8-inch shorter barrel, and you're not going to have the over-penetration that you'd have with something like a 308. And you could probably insert many other, long-distance or hunting-type rounds. Now, I think this could probably even be minimized more if somebody's using a hollow point or a soft point ammunition, because it's just going to get wider and less aerodynamic. It probably drop even faster. Now, if you live in an apartment, all three of these kind of suck for an option. But again, if you're living somewhere where you're a couple hundred yards from your neighbor, I think it's definitely a doable option. Felt recoil, this kind of sucks. If you live by yourself, you live with somebody who's really comfortable handling firearms, I don't think that's a big deal at all, especially if you're somebody who likes a shotgun or you're familiar with a shotgun. The 3 to 4 pounds, that's probably better because, if need be, your 100-pound child or your grandma could probably shoot the AR because it's only at 3 to 4 pounds of recoil. It's really not much kickback on those. My personal issue with the 50 Beowulf, and really this is something that, it's one of the trade-offs, is the capacity of the magazines. Now with the 308, say in an AR-10 platform, usually you'd see 20-round magazines, but you can get 30. AR-15s, usually you'd see a 30-round magazine, but 40 is also a popular choice too. 50 Beowulf, well, you can use an AR-15 magazine, but basically you're going to get 10 rounds in a 30-round AR magazine. And I think in a 20, you're going to get 6 or 7, and I think only 3 or 4 in a 10. So that's the issue there. As some of you know, because I've complained incessantly, I'm now living in a mag ban state until it gets turned over by the Supreme Court. So, one of my options would be an AR-15. Well, the AR-15 was a much better option for me when I had 30 rounds or 40 rounds in a magazine, because in a short range, I think that 50 Beowulf is actually superior to the 5.56. Don't commit me to the mental hospital, I'm serious. Is a better option, bullet for bullet. But then you're thinking about it, if I can only carry 10 rounds of this or 10 rounds of this, I gotta tell you, I kind of would be kind of a toss-up, or maybe even go for the 50 Beowulf. Now, if I could carry, a 30 or 40 round 5.56 magazine, quite frankly, I think I'd rather opt for the 5.56 because you have 30 shots there, and you're also going to minimize over penetration because 5.56 tends to kind of get knocked off course when it starts hitting things. Not good for barriers and whatnot. Whereas the 50 Beowulf would be far better at that. But, I'm talking as a basic home defense situation. Like in the whole band state thing, we're only going to have 10 rounds. It's probably better to have 10 big rounds than 10 small rounds. So I think that's something to bring up also. Basically, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. I mean, if you're the type of person who likes doing long-range shooting, you go to the range. Hopefully, you're one of these lucky people who can actually shoot out to 500 or 600 yards, either on your own property or range near you. I mean, 308 could be really good for that. 50 Beowulf would be pretty useless. Yeah, pretty useless. From what I understand, I've never used a 5.56 out to 500 or 600 yards. Um, it's it's very possible to hit there. Um, I haven't heard people complain about it, but if you're going to try and stretch it out to 1,000, I think you're going to have a lot of trouble. From what I read and from what I hear from other people, not from my personal experience. And again, impossible with this. I kind of like think about the 50 Beowulf as like the modern 45-70. And I was, before I started making this video, I was looking at some 45-70 data, and there was a split between kind of like the older, I call it like the older loadings that could be used like in the trapdoor Springfields, and then the newer loadings, and like a regular loading for a 45-70 is pretty similar to the 50 Beowulf, and the kind of like the plus P versions have even more foot-pounds of energy. And they're both really big rounds and whatnot. Problem is, you see them mainly in lever guns or occasionally bolt actions, mainly lever guns though. So you're not getting the semi-automatic option, whereas the 50 Beowulf does have that semi-automatic option, and it has the magazine option. So I mean, that's what's pretty cool. I think if people look at it as an updated, convenient 45-70, basically, I think that the utility is a lot easier to see. And for those who hunt, I heard it's pretty good for hogs and whatnot. I'm not a hunter, but I heard it's actually pretty good for animals of that nature. Again, within 100 yards or so. I wouldn't try anything further away, because then you're going to be taking like volley shots. You're going to have to, like aim like way higher just to hope it kind of lobs in there. Anyway, just kind of wanted to get this out there. So for those of you who might not be that interested in the 50 Beowulf, just kind of throw some numbers out there for you. I will be back with some more videos soon. Have a good one. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. And I really hope you like my fancy schmancy graphics and screen prompts. I just purchased this at the Dollar Tree for a cool $1.25. So, I'm investing a lot of money in this channel. Talk to you later.